Ready to start. All right, hello and welcome to Lily's Show and Tell series. Before we begin, I do have a couple of quick housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and the recording will be sent out by the end of the week. Feel free to put your questions in the chat and I'll keep an eye on the chat and note down any questions. There will also be a Q&A by the speaker and Kristin will explain all of that later. And then 3, finally, if you want to learn more about Lily or present your own show and tell, I will write April's and mine email address in the chat. And now to our speaker, Kristin Peace.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to share the screen now so we can get into it. Is that sharing? Share. All right. Present with Slido and welcome to this Lily Show and Tell presentation on using Slido, and particularly using Slido for one-shot instruction. To give a little bit of a background about me and what I do, I am a research and instruction librarian at Pepperdine University, and I'm a new librarian here. I started last semester back in August. So I'm the liaison for the communication and women and gender studies programs, and I do a lot of instruction, primarily with first and second year students, but then some upperclassmen as well. And not only am I a new librarian here at Pepperdine, I'm a new librarian, period. I just got my master's degree last May and made a career switch from over 25 years working in television. So quite a change, but I'm really happy with it. So a little bit about how I started using Slido and why I like it. First things first, Slido is an interactive polling application that integrates seamlessly for both in-person and hybrid and online, all three actually types of meetings. When I first started doing instruction, it was when I was an intern, my final semester at library school, and I was an intern at Los Angeles Community College, and all the classes there were virtual, so I had to do it all via Zoom. And I'm sure, as everyone here knows, over Zoom it's hard to engage, and especially with first-year students and some are high schoolers who are taking college classes. It was the first time that they'd ever maybe heard of the library. A lot of them have never been to the library, so I really wanted to figure out a way to draw them out a little bit and get them thinking and talking about what I was presenting in terms of research skills and using the library. And I started using Slido then. When I started here at Pepperdine and all the classes were in person, and it's relatively small class sizes here at Pepperdine, I naively thought, that's it, person to person, that's totally engaging, and I didn't use Slido for about like 1.5 meetings. And then I realized that even if I'm standing right in front of a class of 10 to 20 students, I still needed something, some tool to sort of hook them in, get them engaged, and thinking about and interacting with what I was saying. So the thing that's great in terms of doing that with Slido is that it's a polling application, but the students or the participants don't have to download anything on their end. So it's seamless for them to use. So while we do this presentation, there's a chance for everybody to participate and play along from both the instructor or presenter and the participant or student perspective. So if you want, you can scan this QR code, or you can go to slido.com and put in that right here code. You can usually, most of the time, students do this on their phone, and this is the same screen that I would show at the start of a presentation. And I do ask professors ahead of time that it's okay for everybody to use their phones. And you can imagine as soon as the QR code goes up, everyone's phones whip out anyway. So I give everyone a second to make sure that we have a chance to log in. And I will say these joining instructions show up every time there's an interactive slide. All right, I'm going to move along to a poll for all the participants here. I typically start out with an icebreaker poll, and this is a word cloud poll that Slido has options. So what interaction and engagement tactics do you typically use during a one-shot? I don't ask that of the students. Surprisingly, Google does show up. I usually ask, where do you start your research? And it's a fun way to get them interacting, get them thinking a little bit about their research project. And of course, to see the word Google show up huge in the middle of the screen. That's the main way that everyone does it, which is actually a nice segue into talking about the difference between Google and a search engine and then using the academic databases. But these are fun. I'm glad that I'm going to be able to save this so I can look and see what everything does later. But you can see that this is a really fun and interesting and dynamic way to break the ice with the students and get them thinking. Also, you might note up here, that's how many participants are playing along or answering. So you have a sense of how engaged or not engaged the class is during the time. I love it. Okay. So in order to get here and to get these polls going, you have to do what Slido calls creating an event. And there are two main ways to create an event. The first is to go to slido.com. I'll just show you what that looks like, slido.com. And you can either log in or sign in. If you haven't created an account, you can go ahead and create an account for free. And when you do, you will end up with a page like this. You can see I have my past and upcoming Slido events. Click here where it says create Slido, and now we can create an event right from this home page. You can put in your start and end dates, give it a name, and for this, I'll just call it Lily, and go ahead and create Slido. And now I'll get a template that will give me all the different poll options, as long as it goes, as well as some other customization options for it. So Lily. It will show up eventually. I'll refresh it. I will say that it's been, my browser has been giving me trouble. There we go. So you can see here that you can create different types of polls, and we'll go through what different types of polls are and how they're used. And then right here, once I've created the polls, I can go ahead and present right from this home page. So I don't actually need to integrate it into a platform or into a presentation to use Slido. I can just go and present it right from here. But like I said, I most like to use it integrated into a presentation. And so in order to do that, you have to install and integrate Slido into your whatever presentation form you want to use. You can easily add it to Google Slides. There's also a Chrome browser extension. And in fact, there's a browser extension for more than just Chrome. As I learned this week, I was telling April, my institution rearranged their browser, I don't know, specs, what is and is not allowed. So instead of using Chrome, I've now been running Slido on Microsoft Edge, and it's been working great. You can also download Slido for PowerPoint. You can add it to Microsoft Teams. You can add it to WebEx. And they also have an app called Slido Switcher, which allows you to run Slido from that slido.com page we were just looking at, and seamlessly using your phone as like a remote control, go back and forth with other presentation platforms. So for example, you're using Prezi. You could go from Prezi and then using your phone like a remote, switch back and forth to Slido. Now, in terms of using Slido integrated, once you've downloaded it, I will close this for a second. You will see this icon up here on your Google Slides. You can also click on extension to pull it down. When you hit Slido here, it opens up this sidebar, which is essentially the same template that we are looking at slido.com with different types of integration available. I will say I'm using the free version, so that gives me up to 3 polls per event, and I can accommodate up to 100 people. For the type of classes that I run, that's plenty of people. As I said, Pepperdine has pretty small class sizes in general. And I also find that 3 polls per event works pretty well. Any more than that, it starts to feel a little jammed up and almost distracting. But of course, if you were using it for a different type of event, or if you were for corporate meetings, for example, there are paid versions with unlimited amounts of polls available, and that can accommodate anywhere between 200 and 2,000 people. One of the things you may have noticed when you clicked on and logged into Slido was that there was a screen that said Audience Q&A. So that is available, and it's open now throughout the entire presentation. Participants can add questions and ask questions there. You can also upvote questions from your screen. And those Q&A questions get queued up. And then when I put in the Q&A slide into the presentation, they will populate on screen. So feel free to use the Slido Q&A as well as the Zoom Q&A or chat feature for any questions that you have about Slido. Now on to creating what they call interaction, which are these polls. We've used the word cloud already. I think it's especially helpful for sort of gauging opinions or surveying class feelings, or like I said, to get their ideas about research or to make a point about research and their love of Google. Open text is exactly what it sounds like. It's a poll where you ask a question and then participants can throw up answers as it goes along. You can show the answers all at once, or you can show them as they come in. Candidly, I feel like open text is a more useful tool for creative expression or reflective writing or crowdsourcing ideas. It's not one that I like to use in class because it feels a little bit like a drag. It's not that fun to watch words scrolling up and to read them, and there's nothing sort of immediately actionable about the results. So it's helpful as a reflection tool, but not for me. I do not find it as helpful in the process of giving my presentation. Rating is exactly what it sounds like. It's a scale from 1 to 5 stars or emojis you can actually use, which is to get a sense of how the class feels about a topic or what's being presented, or how they're feeling about what their work is in general or research in general. And then there's also the multiple choice poll. And I wanted to make sure I really emphasize that it's a poll because I see the word multiple choice and it feels like that's an assessment tool or a Q&A tool, and it's not. It's actually a poll with multiple choice answers. So it would look something, if I presented it, and this is not live, but the poll looks something like this. So you can see this is not a live poll. But if I wanted to ask how many participants do you have in this session, the participants can answer one of these multiple choice answers, but it's not a Q&A, it's not a right or wrong. So it's not a great assessment tool, but it is good for getting a sense of where everybody is on a particular scale or on a particular item. The other type of poll that I've used, and I find to be probably for me the most helpful and the most engaging, is the ranking poll for sample search. I'm sure this is going to be familiar to a lot of people. When I first started instruction, I go in, I'd have my topic all planned, and these are for classes where students don't have their own topics picked out yet. Here's what we're going to sample search. And I can't tell you the dead silence when there's either a topic they don't care about, or worse, I had one class where the topic I picked was something that they hadn't learned yet and didn't know about. So that's no good. I knew I didn't want to do that anymore. But of course, I also live in fear of, asking for sample search ideas and being given an idea that I can't work and I don't know how to start the search, or I don't know if there's anything even on it. And it's 15 minutes of a librarian stumbling around in front of the class. This is how I split the difference. I use the ranking poll for sample search. What I would do, and I'll go ahead and actually create a poll for us to use. On the Slido sidebar, click on the poll you want. In this case, I want the ranking. And then you just literally just type in the question you want. So when I do the sample search, I ask the class, where do you want to start today's search? And then I give them options. And I like to give them fun options. So my go-tos are sex, drugs, and money. And then you can see I can set a required number of options. I can randomize the options. I can also show the results immediately, wait to show the results until I click and go to the next slide, or I can choose not to show the results at all. I like to show the results immediately so that there's a little bit of competition for where they go. And then if I click on add to presentation, that interactive slide immediately goes into the presentation. So this is what it looks like as the presenter. But when I click on and make it live, that poll now is live for everybody here. So if we were going to do a sample search, where would everybody like to start it? Sex, drugs, or money? And you can see again how many participants are ranking, how many participants have played along and done it. And this is not timed, so it's up to the presenter. Depending on the class size, I let it go on until everyone's participated. I will say I try not to make this a mandatory or stressful interaction. I let students either participate or not participate as they like. If I see that there's 14 students in the classroom and only 11 seem to be, interacting, that's fine. I do not make a big deal about it. This is supposed to be fun and engaging and not stressful. So we'll leave it there and say, it looks like money is the winner. And then I would go on to a slide like this in the class, where I have the sex, drugs, and money problem statements. So these are topics that I know I can search, and I've done a little pre-work on. They're probably not quite as sexy or titillating as the students are hoping, but then it gets them thinking about the research and a little bit engaged. They chose the topic after all, and then we can go on from there with the instruction. Like I said before, the multiple choice poll is not great for assessment, but Slido does offer the quizzes. It's worth noting, if you are on the free program like I am, that the quizzes do not count towards the final number of polls. So you can have 3 polls and then a quiz, and the quiz can have as many questions as you would like. The quizzes are inserted into your deck pretty much the same way as the rest of it. You come here and you can click on the quiz creator. You put in your question and you add your options. There is a timer for quizzes. If you were unsure about what to ask, you can click on this little square and it pulls up random quiz questions for you, which I've never used, but if you'd use that if you were in a bind. They also have the chance to, I'll go back to this, to show the leaderboard after each question. And I saw some people were using Kahoot, which I'm also a huge fan of Kahoot. Then you know that especially first, second year students, they grew up with Zoom school or graduated with Zoom school. So any chance to have interactive Q&A, to see their name up on the screen, it really resonates with them. So if we put in a quiz, which I did, I present with Slido, it looks like this. On your phones for everybody who had joined in, and again, this is the QR code, you will now see an option to join the quiz, and you have to put in your name. Like I said, I don't make people necessarily put in their real names. They can put in whatever name they feel like using. And then once I feel like this is way more students than I've ever had in the class, by the way. I've never seen so many names show up on the screen. But once everybody has joined in and they're ready to play, and again, the joining instructions are always on every interactive slide. So if a student came late or they didn't feel like playing along at first and then they decided they want to, they have the chance to come in whenever they choose. All right, so I'm going to go from here. So now everyone's, or as many people have joined the quiz. I will click on, and here's the question. Slido can be integrated into which app? I set a timer at 20 seconds. These are the choices, so everyone on their phone can play along. It doesn't show the answer yet. And I can see up here that out of 56, now some people have to hurry up. I should have made it longer. Almost. I clicked on the screen, and most people chose all of the above. That was the correct answer. Slido can be integrated into PowerPoint, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, Google Slides, all of the above. And then you get the leaderboard. And me, that's fantastic. So the leaderboard I like to do at the end of each question, because again, it's a little bit of competition and it's fun. Now, if you were doing a presentation and you didn't plan to use slides, if you were not using a deck, it was a different type of presentation, but the conversation was going in such a way, or there were a lot of moving parts about the conversation, and it felt like a poll would be helpful for corralling the conversation, directing the conversation, or just for fun. Once you've downloaded and integrated Slido into your browser, all you need to do to create an instant interactive poll is go to Slido.new, and it will create an instant event. So like the events we've been creating all along, but this one is instantaneous. It will come up with a code for joining. You can see it working. You will note that this is a different QR code and a different Slido.com code than the one that we've been using for the presentation. So that said, I don't think that it makes a lot of sense. Of course, who knows? But for me, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to go between an one-off event back and forth with a presentation that has Slido involved. But for the sake of this presentation, there's Slido. This is a different QR code. You can go and create a different type of poll. I'll say rating, interest in using Slido, question mark. I could use stars, I could use emojis, and then launch. And now if you have downloaded, see on a different screen, you can have more than one Slido open at the same time. You would be able to do an immediate active poll here. And heart eyes emoji, my favorite. So this is fun. And it's a good way to include or use Slido, even if you weren't planning on it, to know that it's there and it's a tool for you. All right, I will leave that poll open and then go back to the presentation. My hot pink slide and talk a little bit about settings and extras. As I mentioned, I use the free version of Slido. So some of these settings and extras are not available for the free version, but some of them are. This right here, this type of branding or sponsorship, that's with the paid version. But you can use this for if you had an event that was sponsored that year or a presentation that was sponsored. You could also use this for library programming messaging or marketing messaging that you wanted to do. But there are also some customizations that are available with the free version. For example, you may notice that my backgrounds are all orange for Pepperdine, but you can change to any color, and they even have stock photos that you could put behind it. If you did pay for a subscription, you could also upload your own logo or your own institution photos that you want to use. You could also upload photos that you can use in quizzes. So it doesn't need to be just word quizzes for the paid subscription. You can use images in your quizzes. So in addition to the customization and the branding, there's also privacy settings that you can establish in order to make your event not findable over a search engine. And you can also share the event. You can share the event ahead of time by deciding who's an editor and can access it. And you can also share the event afterward by either creating a copy link, or you even can get an embed code if you wanted to embed it into a different type of media that you want to share, like a LibGuide, for example. Another thing I just want to make sure that you see, when we go here, you have, when you pick on your interactions, you can edit them from the sidebar. But if you go to the main, here, the main events, slido.com page, get my main events up. You have a few more options in terms of editing. So for one that I always use, because these are college students after all, is I always enable the profanity filter. So just to make sure I'm not having an unhappy surprise during the middle of class while I'm standing up there. And then you can also change things like character limit, allow multiple answers, hide live results, these type of things. But that is one I definitely like to highlight because it does make me a little bit nervous sometimes, having students be able to put whatever they want on the screen in front of the class, even at Pepperdine. And then going along, so I'm back to present with Slido. And you can see that I don't typically go back and forth between my web browser and the presentation, but it's pretty easy to use. Moving along to analytics and assessment, everybody's favorites. On the analytics front, one of the things that's nice about Slido is that it generates an analytic sort of engagement report automatically at the end of every event that you have. And this is what it looks like. You will get a report where it tells you how many engaged participants you had total. And then it breaks it out by Q&A, by poll engagement, and then it will actually go down and give you the report on the answers for each of your poll questions and your Q&A questions. This analytics report is also shareable via a link, an embed code, or you can actually download it and send it. I don't always share this with professors because sometimes I'm not sure that it would be helpful for them to be able to see the answers. But in some cases I do. For example, I had a capstone event for capstone class rather for the advertising majors. And the first icebreaker I asked them because these are all seniors, and this was their big senior project, was what were they most nervous about? Their capstone. What made them most nervous about getting their capstone done? And those answers I did share with the professor because I thought it might be helpful to get a sense of where the class was feeling and how, what sort of things they may need extra support or a little bit more direction on. Oops, I want to go back. Sorry. That poll came up, but before it did, get back to. I will go back and say we were talking about open text. And that it's not necessarily so great during a class because it does sort of slow things down. But it is actually a helpful way, going back to the idea of assessment or feedback. So you can use an open text poll to ask specific questions. For example, how do you do APA citation? Some things that maybe you have a sense of their mastery or what they gained in terms of understanding research skills or information literacy concepts. You can also use it for feedback. The open text polls can be open and then left open. So you can run it live during the meeting, but then you can also send it out after the meeting, or you can open it up at the end of the meeting, leave the meeting and still have students be able to send answers in. And as we sort of saw in the sneak preview, if we went along, this is what an active poll looks like. So this is an active poll for all the participants today. This would be helpful for me to let me know what was the most helpful thing you learned during this presentation. I have had the settings set so that the answers don't show up. It's also anonymous, and but I will be able to see these afterwards and have a chance to read through them and really reflect on them. And this will be open throughout, even after we're done here today. And now this is that Q&A slide that I talked about. So I'll go back and just show you what it looks like on the screen. It's this Q&A slide. And if I can move this slide to any part here. And that's another thing I should show you, is that you can move any of these Slido interactions right around and change where you want them to run during your presentation. I put it here. When you have this slide, all the questions that have been asked during the presentation, and you could even send the Q&A link out ahead of time to a class or ahead of time to a professor to share with the class, will show up when you hit present with Slido. So I will go through and I'll answer some of these questions, and then while I do that, I will show you, next one, some of the ways that you can manage this. So can you share Slido results with students later? Yes. As I just said, you can download the individual question results in the analytics and share that either via a link or a download. And now that I've answered that and I see that it's uploaded, I can click on this and it goes away. And I'm not saying that I like this question more, but I'm just showing you I could move that up to say that this is something I want to make sure we spend some time and definitely answer. And yes, the analytic reports are available in the free version. And in fact, you get them for each Slido event that you do, and you can also generate all of your Slidos. So I can look at the end of the semester and see, how my engagement was across the entire semester with, say, all COM 180 classes. Answer that. Does it work with Canvas slides? I've never tried it integrated with Canvas slides, and I don't think that it does have a specific integrate with Canvas slides, but you could always use that Slido switcher to go back and forth between the Slido.com page where it's running those Slidos and then the Canva presentation. You only get one event for free, and you delete the only event each time. No, I don't delete the events, but they do have dates on them, if I'm understanding this question correctly. So I'll show you what it looks like. Here's my event page. So you can see I have all these events here, and I don't delete those. These are some of them, they're not all of them. I don't delete any of these, but they do have a date on them when they stop being live. And these are all my ones that are coming up and that are still live. So it's 3 polls per event, and then I can have any number of events that I want, but I don't have them all live each time. Hopefully I answered that. Who can see the question? These are, I think I answered that because then hopefully you can all see these questions that are happening here. I can make it, that is an option, that you can have the Q&A come in after the class so that it's not a slide at all. So for example, the Q&A is always live, but I don't need to include this slide into the deck. And I don't always include a Q&A slide when I present to students because, it's 2 ways. I didn't do it at first because again, I felt like I was standing in front of the students. I can ask them maybe if they don't have any questions, if it's all making sense, and do it live. I did find that some students seem to be quieter, especially with a small class size. Some of them get sort of overpowered. And so I started using the Q&A and I just open it up. I let the students know it's there. And then sometimes I will not use the slide, but will answer and go back and answer the Q&A directly to the students that way. After the class, I'll either email them, or if I come back to that class, I can talk to them. I wish I could see everybody's faces so I can know that this is all making sense. Yeah, there are unlimited number of quizzes per event in the free version. Yes, I've never been told to stop doing quizzes. You can do, I've done quizzes with up to like 5 different questions. And again, I try not to overstuff the class with the interaction, just to let things breathe a little bit. I will say with the paid version, you can also merge your polls together into one bigger survey. You can have a survey with all the polls all together at one time. Otherwise, on the free version, the polls they're live one at a time. I can't run 2 polls at one time. We insert a link to a poll in a web page. Yeah, they have the embed code that you can for your Slido interactions, that you should be able to do that as well as a way of sharing it. All right, answer that. Answer that. I'm going to answer that. Do you use this as an assessment tool too? Like I said, I do. It's not. I've done it a couple of different ways. I put up that open text at the end of class and said, what did you think was most helpful? Or what was something you didn't know that you learned during the class? That's sort of more of an engagement assessment for me. I will, in all candor, depending on when during the class I'm brought in, and I typically am given like 45 minutes maybe to do the presentation. If it's at the end of class, students are out the door. The professor's like, why are you asking us questions? I need to give them their homework assignment or like discuss something. So I don't usually do that now because I wasn't really getting a lot of helpful stuff from it. In terms of a mastery assessment or a skills assessment, I like the quizzes better. And I do use that. I try to make it fun and use the quizzes maybe not so much like you understand how to do APA citation for a journal article, but more like what type of things do you think you could find using a marketing database? And to get them thinking a little bit more about why they're doing their research and what is out there in terms of research. But yeah, you can use it as an assessment tool for sure. It's going to be useful for things like a library, right? Yes, I think so for sure. And in fact, I believe when you look at the Slido materials, that is what they originally intended it to be. It's really not so much an educational tool, but more of a corporate meeting type tool, especially this point you bring up here. Absolutely. Allowing people to ask questions without raising hands, because you can do this and we can go right through and answer them and people can be uploading them. So I would say absolutely. In fact, I believe when you see slido.com, that's what they intended it to be used for at first. How are polls activated and closed from within the presentation? I will show they're activated. So if I go here, go back to quizzes. As soon as I say present with Slido, now the interaction is active. And as I click and just move through this presentation like I would any other Google slide presentation, I click on it and I get to the interactive pages. And they run as soon as I click on them, and then they're off. And they end as soon as I click on to the next one. And then they're stopped once the presentation is stopped. Of course, they're live still unless I go and take them off in terms of the date that they're available. But they are literally, it's just like you're running any other slide on your presentation. Let me go back to my Q&A. There I click with present with Slido, and now we're all seeing the presentation screen that has the Q&A up running live. This is the present mode, is what they call it. Have you used Slido to help teach citations? This is what I just said. No, I mean, I have used it to ask some polling questions, more like which citation style do you use most often? And then use the Slido to get into that. I thought about using it for quizzes, but I haven't, for the most part, this is just me personally, I try to make the Slido stuff sort of like a fun way to get into a topic and not really delve into the nitty gritty using the Slido. But again, I only have 45 minutes, so I can't use and do as much stuff as I would like, but I think it would be great to help teach citation for. I think it'd be good. Have you compared Slido to other polling software options? I have looked at some of the other polling software options out there. I would say the thing that I liked about Slido and why I resonated with it is because it was super easy to log in, use, and it's so seamless with Google Slides, which is the presentation that I usually use. It's really just like you're adding any other slide, except that it's interactive. And so for me, I found that that was the easiest and most smooth transition. And I like that the students don't have to download anything. Plus they love a QR code, right? So anything with a QR code, they immediately know what to do with it. And it's just really easy to use. And then how do I mark questions as answered? Oh, that was my own question. In case I didn't get any questions. I just wanted to make sure there was one up there. And you, Kristin, you mark questions as answered by clicking on this plus the little check sign right there. And then that's it. That is my presentation. I was happy to answer any other questions that have come up over chat. But I appreciate everybody coming this morning. I hope this was helpful and then you get to play around and maybe use Slido for your own engagement and one-shot instruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristin. There is one more question from the chat, and it's from Lauren. It's, how did you learn how to use Slido? Does it have a tutorial?
It does have, they have a bunch of different tutorials that you can watch that cover different types of polls, logging in, but in all candor, it is really simple to use. I found it, I added the extension and immediately was able to integrate it into my slides. The learning curve is real shallow. It's really smooth. It's not much of it's really easy to use, which is why I like it.
Okay, thank you so much, Kristin, and thank you so much for the presentation about Slido. And our next show and tell will be on February 22nd at 10 a.m. PST, and we hope to see you all there.